Today, this is the eighth unit of the course. We have two speakers lined up today. We are going to talk about how do you manage your finances, counting in your company. So this is something you definitely need to know when you are planning for a business, right? How do you manage your funding, financing, accounting, etc.? Without that, you're not going anywhere, right? You will only be heading to problems. And the second part of the program today is about company law. Of course, everybody understand if you want to do a business in Sri Lanka, you've got to know the company law in Sri Lanka. If you want to do it in some other country, you need to know the company law in that country. Without these things, you are not a complete entrepreneur because you will easily run into problems with the legal system in the country. So therefore, these two sessions are not tech. Okay, we have dealt with tech and intellectual property previous sessions. Today, it's something very different, but very, very important for a business developer. Number one, how to manage your finances, accounting, and number two, how to deal with the law of the land with regard to the businesses. All right. So let me introduce our first speaker today. Mr. Praveen Ruberu, a good old friend of mine and a well-wisher of all our efforts in this domain. Praveen graciously agreed to deliver a talk today in this program, and I appreciate it very much, Praveen. Praveen heads the accounting, outsourcing, and payroll services at Ernst & Young, Colombo. So he has over 25 years of experience with EY, Ernst & Young, providing the agility and resilience in the current times. He has hands-on experience in company winding up and liquidations in Sri Lanka. So quite long years of experience. So Praveen has worked at Ernst & Young, Boston, USA, and Ernst & Young, Singapore. And he's a fellow member of CIMA UK, a fellow member of ACCA UK, a chartered global management accountant of the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, USA, and a fellow member of CMA Sri Lanka. And Praveen holds an MBA from the University of Sri Jawaharlal. So I cordially invite Praveen to take over the proceedings and deliver his session. Praveen, over to you.
So, being in the industry, I have done, being in the accounting and finance profession, these are very broad areas which will not be able to give you the depth of it. But definitely, as we have discussed in structuring this program, I will try my level best to give the fundamental understanding so that you all have the direction and the know-how to route or to direct your business or your new venture in these three areas. So before I just do that, I would like to just have few disclaimers, because since the area is so broad and since the area can be interpreted in so many ways, I would like to just say a few comments. The details I'll be talking about, the form of companies, it may be different. I'm talking about only a few, and also the area on company, in terms of what type of companies you all should incorporate. I will not elaborate further because there is a separate section on company secretariat, company secretarial work, and company law and all of that, which is done after this. But I need to talk a little bit about the company, which type of a company, because the type of the company and tax is linked together. And also the areas of tax that I'm elaborating also will be the most frequently used areas of tax, and which may be not all the taxes that might come to play, but these will be definitely some areas that you will come across. But these are not only the areas that can come to you. And also, I'll be touching a little bit depth on auditing of your accounting statements, and that is also will be very generalized just for you to have understanding what is a financial audit and what will happen. But auditing and assurance is a very broad area, and the interpretations will be broader than this. So this is just a general understanding. And also, there will be few areas I'll be talking about bookkeeping, how to keep your records, how you should maintain, and those are from my exposure and experience, and those can be interpreted differently by different personnel. But during my exposure over the years with the firm and working with the different industries and different companies, benchmarking with the best practices, I'm sharing you my knowledge. And also, I would like to say this presentation is a presentation done and owned by me. And this is not the representation of Ernst & Young, and this is not a document produced by Ernst & Young, and this is a presentation of my exposure and experience to you all, and I'm sharing it. So going forward, this, I would say, a very fundamental, simple statement where anybody reading this will understand a very simple logic. Getting your fundamental administration, accounting, and recording them right is a common feature of all successful businesses. So you have to hit on the words administration, accounting, and recording. Accounting and recording it them right. The word right is very important, and I will try to elaborate entire presentation on these fundamentals. And these administration, accounting, and recording them right is a common feature of any of the successful businesses you come across in the world today. If you want to find any business, if you know any business which is doing successful, they would have done at least two of them right. Majority would do all three, but at least two of them should be done properly. If not, the successful business which is continuing to the future, which is not having a short success and have a short run on the lifespan of the business, but continuing success will depend on these three fundamentals. So in terms of doing a business, in terms of looking into areas of doing a business, any business idea needs to, you can have a business idea, you can just have a, basically do in a very ad hoc way, have the scenario, you produce something, you sell it, you get some money, you put to a bank. So that is not business. That is something very, it's a very homemade thing. But if you want to do a proper thing, you need to have your business or your venture or your let's say the drive to make money. It should come into some sort of an entity in the Sri Lankan structure. The entity will create you the base where it creates you the need a base which creates the identity of the business. So in the context of identity, there are few options that few commonly used options that which Sri Lanka allows you to formalize it. I'm pretty sure under the company secretarial company law section, this will be more elaborated, but I will just touch on the few areas that is relevant. Number one, which is the very simplest one, is the sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship is the most simplest one, which you can register. It is normally it's a very simple format. You can do it at the Pradesh Lekam Karyalayya. It's a simple business setup. You need to once you set it up, you are able to open a bank account under your business name. You are able to have able to create payments, receipts, create employ people under this, and also it gives you a stability, it gives you a frame of a business, it gives you an entity where instead of an individual by himself or herself doing business, there is a form of a creation of a business and an entity under sole proprietorship. So that's one form, which is a common form, and that might be the first step in creating your business and taking it to the next level. But this is the first step that we can do in Sri Lanka. So mainly my jargon and what I will be talking will be how business, how it can be done in Sri Lanka. ලංකාවේ කොහොමද ඒක කරන්න පුළුවන් විදිහට තමයි මම ගොඩක් වෙලාවට මගේ ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් එක කරගෙන යන්නේ. මොකද ලංකාවේ ඇතුළත කරන බිස්නස් වලට ඉස්සල්ලාම ලේසියෙන් අපිට යන්න පුළුවන් තැනක් තමයි තනි පුද්ගල ව්‍යාපාරය. ඒ කියන්නේ sole proprietorship. So it's very straightforward. ඒක හරිම ලේසි. ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම් කාර්යාලය රෙජිස්ටර් කරන්න තියෙන්නේ ලොකු කිසිම ලොකු රෙජිස්ට්‍රේෂන් ෆී එකක් විතරයි යන්නේ. ඒ වගේම ලොකු ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් එකක් නැහැ. ඒ වගේම මේක කරාට පස්සේ මේ නම් කියන්නේ මේ නමෙන් අපි හිතමු ABC තනි පුද්ගල ව්‍යාපාරේ නමින් බැංක් account එකක් open කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකට employees ලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ හා සමානව ඒකට අපිට මුල් පියවරක් හැටියට sole proprietorship. Then second one will be partnership. Again, partnership is where you have it the same as the sole proprietorship, but the ownership is shared and the liabilities are shared, and you are doing this mostly in a partnership. ඒ කියන්නේ හවුල්කරුවා කියන්නේ ඔයත් එක තව කෙනෙක් අපි හිතමු අලුතෙන් ඉන්වෙන්ෂන් එකක් කරනවා නම් ඒක දෙන්නෙක් එක්ක කරනවා නම් ඒක දෙන්නම equally සම්බන්ධ වෙලා මේක වැඩ කරනවා නම් ඒ ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් එක ඕගොල්ලන්ට පාර්ට්නර්ෂිප් එකක් හැටියට රෙජිස්ටර් කරන්න පුළුවන්. පාර්ට්නර්ෂිප් එකක් හැටියට ඒක රෙජිස්ටර් කරාට පස්සේ ඒක වෙනම ක්‍රමවේදයකින් රෙජිස්ටර් වෙන්නේ. ඒකත් එච්චර අපහසු නෑ. බොහොම ඒක වෙනම රෙජිස්ට්‍රේෂන් ක්‍රමවේද තියෙනවා. ඒක ප්ලස් මම හිතන්නේ ඊළඟ සෙක්ෂන් එකේ ඉලබරේට් වෙයි. හැබැයි කොහරි තැනක මොන හරි ඉෂුස් තියෙනවා නම් මට ප්‍රොෆෙසර් හරා මට ප්‍රශ්න යොමු කරන්න මට ක්ලියර් කරලා දෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක තමයි පාර්ට්නර්ෂිප් එක. කියන්නේ හවුල් කියන්නේ මේකට කියන්නේ හවුල් ව්‍යාපාරය. So ඒක දැන් sole proprietorship හවුල් ව්‍යාපාරයක්. ඊට පස්සේ තියෙන එක තමයි ඊළඟ ඔප්ෂන් එක තමයි limited liability company. Limited liability company එකක් තමයි ලංකාවේ අපි තනි පුද්ගල හවුල් ව්‍යාපාර ඊළඟ ස්ටේජ් එක. Private limited company is the most common company form in Sri Lanka, and this is a separate legal entity. All the others are also separate legal entities, and this as well is a separate legal entity where the ownership is where the company owns the asset. They can make a private limited company එක නීතිය ඉදිරිපිට පුද්ගලයෙක් හැටියට කියන්නේ නීතිය ඉදිරිපිට යම් කිසි identity එකක් ලබනවා. මේකේ ඉන්න shareholders ලා හරි directors එක shareholder කෙනෙකු එක director කෙනෙකු මේකෙන් අපිට පුළුවන් මේක පටන් ගන්න. හැබැයි මේකේ වගකීම liabilities ඔක්කොම තියෙන්නේ company එක නමින්. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒක individuals ට ඒක යන්නේ නැහැ, company එක නමින් යන්නේ. අර උඩ sole proprietorship partnership මේ දෙකේම බදු ඒ කියන්නේ taxes individual basis එකකින් යන්න තියෙන්නේ. හැබැයි මෙතන යන්න තියෙන්නේ company individual basis නෙමෙයි company එක. මේ ක්‍රමවේද තව එකක් තමයි ඒක මම හිතන්නේ මේ අවස්ථාවේදී මේක එච්චරම වැදගත් නොවෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒත් ඒක මම කියන එක මම හිතන්නේ මේ අවස්ථාවේ සාධාරණයි. ඒක තමයි public limited company එකක්. ඒ කියන්නේ මේක ඕගොල්ලන් stock exchange එකේ ඕගොල්ලන් company එක register කරලා ඕගොල්ලන්ට public එකෙන් shares sell කරලා ඒක කියන්නේ ඒක හැබැයි ඒ තත්ත්වයට එන්න ටිකක් කල් යනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ ගොඩක් establish වෙන්න ඕනේ, capital එක තියෙන්න ඕනේ, business තියෙන්න ඕනේ, Colombo Stock Exchange regulations follow කරන්න ඕනේ. So ඒක ගොඩක් steps ටිකක් යන්න ඕනේ තමයි. හැබැයි ඒක there is a possibility because once you start as sole proprietorship, once you develop, then you can have another partner, it will develop. Then once you get to the partnership, then you can create a company, And when the company comes to the next level, it's a public quoted company is a possibility, and it's the, I would say, the next level where you are the best, the next utmost level, currently, not right now, but currently in the utmost level that you can bring your company or your business or your entrepreneur thoughts to the final stage. And that will not the final stage, but this can be an option in Sri Lanka. So as I said earlier, there are so many options that you all can invest, bring investors, and there are a lot of opportunities that can create. And I'm pretty sure most of you all here may have ideas in terms of your company, and you might be having investors. So there might be different forms, different scenarios, but these four will be the most common, and the top three will be the most feasible areas that an entrepreneur, in terms of developing your business and your know-how, these three options might be a good start. Then let me jump right away to business recording. As I told you, administration comes into recording and bookkeeping, and keeping track of what you are doing. So business recording is something that I don't want to make it theoretical here, but business recording is something that I would say it must be a must, irrespective of you knowing accounting or irrespective of you knowing anything about accounting. Business recording is something which you can do not knowing anything, because business recording should be a habit. A habit from the form, let's hope what I'm trying to say is elaborated. Why I'm saying it's a habit, because business recording is the fundamental that you'll be using for your accounting. So when I say business recording, is the money you invest or the money you put for money you put into the investment into your business or your entrepreneurship, and the payments you make, you need to keep a track. You need to keep a track, and that is very simple. If you maintain an Excel, you need to say, okay, I took some savings, or I put some money in. This is the amount I have put in. Let's say you have registered a sole proprietorship. And when you have done a sole proprietorship, you are allowed to have a bank account. You can have a segregated bank account where you do not do your personal work. You take that bank account and you simply put money into that account, take money out of that account, and you maintain a simple Excel of what in and out. And once you record it, you need to keep a tab of what you have recorded and all the bills and the payments. It's very simple. If you can take a picture, scan it, and have a Google Drive or something, and share those documentation, that will be the best. Because at the end, because records to be kept, because these numbers and these details which you keep is where the legal compliance originals with contact either. Because at the end of the day, let's say you have a lease agreement, let's say you have made a payment. So those are documentation that the legal compliance, the legal originals, this is where you, because as and when you're entrepreneurs, if you do not keep track of these things, by the time you have created the product, by the time you all have done your business, you will not remember what you have done. And these are numbers and figures that you have invested. But if you not keep, that's why I'm telling you, don't think of accounting. Make it a habit to track your records, track your accounting details, track your income and expenditure. Simple as that. Because those income and expenditure is what at the end of the day which creates your cash, bank, and commitments and original supporting documents and other these. Because if you simply keep track of your in and out in a simple Excel, creating accounting out of that is Very simple. But only thing, trying to do accounts when you do not have the information is a nightmare to any accountant or even for you. What you remember today, the know-how you have of the expenditure you paid today will be in a human nature, you will forget in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And in the next 6 months, if you think of, okay, I have paid 75,000 rupees for this day, what are the things I did, what are the bills I want, it's going to be a nightmare for you all to find this. So please make it a habit to track your records and track your in and expenditure. In a way, very simply, in a way that you can recall it and understand it. Because what you know today, it is very clear, and what you're going to, if you're going to record it in another 3 or 4 days, the detail is going to be less. So that's why I'm saying to, in a way that you can recall it and clearly understand. So in terms of, so this is what exactly I explained: income and expenditure, separate bank account, simple Excel worksheet, expense supportings, and details. Use technology as it is. So these things can be simply done on your phone. You have your to-do list, or you have a simple note, my income, my expenditure. You can have your bank statement, bank people to PDF your last month's bank statement and send it to you. You can have everything, but use technology at utmost. Because if you're going to file the bills and you're going to put the bills to a file and make a record after that, that's not going to happen. If you have a bill then and there, take a picture of it. You can make a folder in your phone. You can simply do it. But if you want to, I would say that's for people who are more tech savvy or more people who are using technology. But if you want to do the simple old way, keep a track of the bills and record it separately on Excel and use it. So why organizations keep accounts? Basically, systematic recording is basically it is systematic recording your business transactions. Accounting is systematic recording of your business transactions. The only way you can direct your company to the next level, because systematic recording of your business transactions will make you understand how you have spent your money, how you have recovered it, and how the money, because you need to read the trends. So when you record them properly, only this can take place. So recording them properly is in my exposure, most of the places where people are unable to understand what has happened in their business is mainly because they have not recorded their transactions properly and they can't recall the history. Then if you sole proprietorship, partnership, it's best that you maintain your accounts. But if at the point you create this as a limited liability company, the third option, it becomes mandatory. In the Companies Act 2007, which I think will be, but these sections make it mandatory for you to record your transactions. Once you record your transactions, you will have to get an accountant's assistant to do these areas of accounts. You need to get it audited and get it moved on. Accounts will assist you clearly understand its financial ability to operate and move forward, identify assets you have, and the commitments you need to honor. So, ladies and gentlemen, so I have not talked about accounting because I don't think I'm able to provide you the accounting, but then the importance of accounting is you will be able to extrapolate your business from today to tomorrow. For you to do account, for you to get your accounts done or to do accounts, the fundamental fact is keep a track of your expenditure and income with relevant supporting documents. Keep a track of your accounts with the relevant supporting documents and ensure that you do not mix your personal income expenditure with the business or the entrepreneur work that you're doing. So that's also another common area. They use a common account, their personal account, and sorting out which went out and which went out, because that way you're unable to see, as I tell you, the first point, the only way you can direct your company to the next level and thereafter of understanding how much of money my business is creating and how much of money I've spent, how much of money or the surplus I have made. That will give you a boost. For you to get that, you need to keep separate track of your income and expenditure, which will lead to a very clear set of accounts. And everybody who is a sole proprietor or a partnership will go to the private limited companies. That should be your objective, where your company becomes a legitimate entity in the Sri Lankan private limited company or the ROC. And at that point of time, accounting, auditing is a must. So I think I'm going to run through a few little bit. So accounting and bookkeeping I will give you a few pointers here. Accounting and bookkeeping will assist you for your short-term, medium-term budgeting. And it will further assist you to track your company or your entities performance, take better decisions, give accurate information when applying for funding or loans, or when investors are coming. You can say, okay, the last 3 years I have done this is how I have performed, this is what I have made. uh, uh, it will enable you to keep track with your budgeting of short term, medium term. When you have a budget and when you have these numbers, when you are recording your numbers properly, you can keep track of your budget, whether you're deviating from your budget or not. Then in every form of entities, you are liable to tax in some form, and you will be paying the proper tax, or you will be knowing the proper tax only when you have the proper recording of your in and out. Then with these proper accounting, you will be led to a proper audit. From a proper audit, you will be your financial statements will be validated, and the validated statements will be a very positive impact to reach out to bank facilities. Bank facilities is something most of you all will come across to have the working capital in your organizations, because you might not have the investment you want to do your production or do your business. So you need to have credit facilities, and the banks will support you when your numbers are clear. So once again, for you to have your numbers clear, for you to remember what you have done in the past, you need to make it a habit to record your income and expenditure. Because once you record your income and expenditure, for an accountant, for an auditor, everything is very straightforward, because they know what has taken place, but they do not have to sit down with you and make you go back and bring back history, but the history is in recorded. So better accounting, clear bank statements will attract not only the bank facilities, it will attract investors and funding companies. When your product is good and when your opening to the market is clear, and there is a positiveness, there will be investors looking at you. When the investors come, investors are people who will want to know your numbers. What have you done? How have you played? What is your budget? How did you plan this out? When that comes to play, and if you're going to get the assistance of an accountant, or if you get the assistance from anybody, the history of how you have maintained and how the gradual development has taken place with the clear numbers is very transparent. And also with this, you will have a long-lasting brand building with transparent and accounting records. So I think I have just mentioned that before going to that. So I will just jump into few accounting and administrative related challenges. So entrepreneurs and startups may face challenges like cash flow management, hiring employees, time management, delegating tasks, choosing what to sell, marketing strategy, capital and debt, staff budgeting, business growth, self-doubt. So if you just look at all of these challenges, cash flow management. So cash flow management is you need to know, people might be asking you to pay, but if you have a track and if you have budgeted this and if you have forecasted whatever needs to be done and keeping your records, cash flow management will not be a problem. So hiring of employees. So one person working with you will say, okay, I need a couple of more people to work, but with the numbers, you will understand, okay, one person is doing this much, I'm paying person this, his output is this much. So your demand is this much. So with the numbers in back of you hiring people also will be, it will give you a base. Based on the numbers, I will say, okay, I can see a demand. There is an order going to come. Last month, I did an order for 100,000. I needed two people, and with that, I was able to make a 20% profit. I have got an order for 300,000. Based on that, I need to deliver it on the same area. So based on that, I don't think my two people can do this. Therefore, I might have to get another one or two people, or I can extend their hours or pay them more. So the numbers are working in your head because you have the numbers with you. So hiring people, and also that goes with time management, then delegating tasks. All these challenges which you are going to face will be mitigated more than 50% with the information you have. Mind you, I'm telling you this information, I'm not telling you to do accounting, I'm just telling you to keep track of your expenditure and income. That's the only one which is going to help you to come out to do your accounting. Because you have created the entity from the legal formation, you are keeping track, you get accountant or somebody else, or even you can do the numbers in terms of the accounting, because sole proprietorship and partnership is it's needed just to maintain accounts. When you come to a company level, definitely you need the support of accountant, and these areas will be mitigated once you have your numbers with you. So in terms of additional skills, I would say communication, sales and marketing, branding, accounting and tax, and business strategy. And here I would highlight on communication skills, where you need to have a track. You need to be very clear in your communication, in your ins and outs, and also keeping track of your accounting and tax will be the two areas that I will emphasize here in the additional skills you need to bring in if needed in your day-to-day business operations and taking it forward. So this area is basically I'm touching now. I have touched on the area, the formation of a company. I've touched on why you should keep track and how your bookkeeping has to be, why it should be done, and what are the benefits and how you can overcome your challenges. So the third option, when you create a private limited company, by law, you have to get it audited. And I will not talk about compliance, the dates, and what are the scenarios that should take, but I will just touch on the fact of the word audit, or the word of statutory report and auditing. And you can just see this from some data that I have got of the top reasons of business failure, startup failures in the recent past. This document is not that old. I mean, I would say about 1 or 2 years back. So if you can see, the main reasons for them to frequent cited reasons for startup failures. Number one is number one, in areas which is relevant to accounting, is ran out of cash, pricing, costing issues that they have priced it wrong, ran out of cash is bad cash management, the business model they have used is not proper, no financing or investors. So if you have these areas, if you can just look, these are all linked to recording and tracking your numbers. If the numbers are tracked, these areas will not be the common areas for startups to fail. So in a simple context, in the Sri Lankan in the auditing perspective, okay, I am 49. The Companies Act clearly states every company shall keep accounting records. Every company will keep accounting records. Okay. Every company should keep accounting record which correctly records and explain company's transactions. So this is just what the act says and what the law will say for you to do. And in terms of when you get audit done, basically audit is where the numbers that you have recorded is proper and is according to the law of the country. And when audit report is given, the report that you should go for is an unqualified audit report. Qualified disclaimer adverse means there's some issue. Those are areas that you should avoid. Any opinion other than an unqualified opinion is detrimental to the organization. So unqualified opinion is what you should go, where they say your balances are recorded true and fair and they do not see any major deviations from the work they have done. So I'm just touching on the audit area. As I told you in my disclaimer, this is a broad area. Audit or assurance is basically a third party, a chartered accountant, proper who is auditor. An auditor is a third party, a chartered accountant of Sri Lanka who will go through the numbers and say those numbers are true and fair and properly stated. So these areas I could. I think you all can share this. You all can go through this. These are the common pitfalls where when the records are not properly kept, there will be areas that these are some of the areas you will, when the audit is not done, the audit is not performed. These are the common pitfalls we have and we have come across, which you can rush through. So these are few statements defining about the auditor, because auditor is auditing or recording the numbers and showing the world. This is very special when it comes to the public companies, but whether public, public limited companies are companies with public money, and the audit reports and things like of that nature really shows the public how authentic and how transparent the companies are. So that's the role that auditor plays. So I will just jump to tax. Please share. Please look into these slides, and I have not gone in. I have gone in little bit depth for anybody who wants to read. But these few taxes are the areas I feel, not the areas, the taxes I feel which is commonly used for the commonly used in the arena of business. And I will, the next slide is, I have discussed on about 5 taxes. I will not go into depth of those taxes because explaining the tax will not be a fruitful one right now, because it's detailed, right? But I will talk of the tax, and I will talk that tax will be applicable to the 4 companies or the 4 entities I spoke of. And please have a run through when you have the time. The tax will elaborate, and these taxes I think I have updated to the current utmost timing. But if you look at this slide in another 6 months, it might be a different story. So don't benchmark this as the law of the country, because currently the tax regime, then a tax practice deviates based on the requirement. And I had not spoken about any personal taxes. Personal taxes in sense of how the salary is impacted, that area I have not touched. So number 1 tax is the income tax, and mind you, this income tax will be only applicable for the private limited companies and public companies. And I have just elaborated on that, which is detailed. I'm unable to summarize it because there's no way to summarize beyond this. Then the capital gain tax will be different in different percentages under all forms of companies, which I have explained before. In a certain, but the percentage will vary as per the entity. Then the value added tax is also relevant to all form of entities based on different thresholds to all, I would say value added tax at different thresholds to all forms of entities. And there is this social security contribution level that is also a different level to all different thresholds of entity, and the stamp duty, which is applicable to all forms at different levels. So I will just touch these things, touch these taxes, and you can just have a look into it, because I am elaborating one by one will not be fruitful at this point, because I just want to touch base on the areas of tax which you as entrepreneur, as a sole proprietor, as a partnership or partner of a partnership, or a director or shareholder of a private limited company will come across. So basically that's it, Professor. So if there are any questions, I think I have 5 minutes more. But if there are any area you all feel that I have rushed through, please feel free to reach out to Professor through the email, and I will be more than happy to answer any
Yeah.
of those concerns. And if I'm unable, I'll ensure that I will get the assistance and get back to you.
Praveen,
Anything,
there are few,
Professor?
yeah, there are few questions in the chat room. Let me speak out. First one is, what is the tax rate for LLCs?
LCs.
Yeah. So the question is, what is the tax rate for LLC?
Sorry, LLC. I'm not. What do you mean by LLC?
Well, I think it's referring to limited liability companies, I believe.
Limited
Yeah.
liability company. Yes. So limited liability companies, I have on the income tax, I have made a note for all of that. So I would say limited liability companies about come to it's on 30% to just have a look on this chart that will liberate all the details in terms of specifically, because tax rates I have noted down at this slide. This slide will give a broader understanding of the rates.
Okay. The next one is there any tax concessions for startups?
Professor, I know this taxes area is going to be little bit tricky. So any right now, I don't see any areas concessions given, because tax is something little fragile in terms of answering on a forum of this nature. But
Yeah.
right now, I don't think there are any startup scenarios for certain industries, or the IT outsourcing industry. There is something, if I'm not mistaken, but other than that, I don't think of. But I can't vouch on that, and especially the tax areas will be a little bit tough
Yeah.
for my forte of
All right. Yeah. So we'll get that question answered later, maybe, and post it on the,
yeah. So please
yeah.
forward those questions. I will definitely be able to get a clear cut in terms of LLC is very straightforward. I think it's 30% and going forward, but in terms of value added and all of that will depend and is more detailed. It's a little bit tough to answer the tax part of questions. Anything on accounting, Professor?
Yes, there's another one. We are an IT related company. We started in 2020. Yeah, 3 years ago. Still,
Okay.
we didn't register in the Inland Revenue Department. So, how
Okay.
is the
So
legal
when
side?
Okay. So they have okay. So that is where they are a IT company. When they say they are a company, they would have incorporated this 3 years ago in at ROC, I suppose, right?
You can
Yeah.
speak out. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. You want me
This
to
is
speak, right?
Hevapati Prasad. Can you explain your question, Hemapati? He says we started in 2020, still we didn't register in the Inland Revenue Department.
Yes,
So
so they would have started. I mean, sometimes when they say they have started, uh, my question will be, number one, they have to starting some sort of a business and starting and incorporating it as a private limited company at ROC. So then only they will become legitimate entity. And if that is done and they have not registered, it's best that you register as soon as possible. But before doing that, you will have to see where you stand in your numbers, whether you have made a profit and whether you are liable for any of the taxes which I have spoken of. So if you have not registered, then the question is, I mean, normally if you have started, when you incorporate the company, the registration also takes place. So that means if you're not registered, then the VAT payments, where input output setting off and all of that, you would have not gone through. So your business transactions that have taken place to date will be important for you to understand where you stand in your numbers. And also, if you feel if you're doing well and the business is in the next level, registering for registering at our RID, it will be good voluntarily before they pressure you to register. Because when they pressure you to register, it will be a scenario that they will go back 3 years and all of that. But if you have done your numbers in the last 3 years, if you incorporate this as a company, then you are liable to have at least the first audit in 15 months and the second, at least 2 audits by now, which you should get it done from a chartered accountant, then, because you have registered this as a private limited company. So based on those audit reports, you can make an understanding to RID and register your company to RID as well.
Hevapati, I think the question is not very clear because you said you are an IT company, which means you have already registered. When you say company, you are registered.
Yes.
But then you say you have not registered in the Inland Revenue Department, right?
Yeah, that is possible, doctor. That is possible. They would have registered they would have registered in the ROC. Then
Right.
anybody who registered at ROC will not be registering at IRD also. So that is something they should do basically now. When they
Yeah.
registered as a private limited company, their numbers would have not been that high, or it could just been a startup at that level. But now their numbers will be different, and based on their numbers, it will be best for them to register to ROC.
Right. So
Sorry,
Praveen,
at IRD.
yeah, Praveen, what about the workers, the employees there who have been working last 3 years and they have not been registered in the IRD?
No, IRD doesn't have an impact with the workers, because
Okay.
anybody who's working not for a limited company, but even for a sole proprietorship, the owner is required to do the mandatory statutory payments for them. Whether it's a private limited company, whether it's a sole proprietor or a partnership, any employer is required to do the 12% payment and all requirements as per the law of the land to the labor department.
Yeah. So now is it too late for him to do this thing and
No, I
get to the
did,
formal
but it
track?
just just three years is where so basically your first audit should take place from the date of incorporation, 15 months from the date of incorporation. So it's 3 years means just 2 audits. So number one, I would say IRD registration is relevant, but number one is you have to ensure that you have done your first or second audit by now. Based on that, you can ask your auditor to assist you in registering you, or the Secretary can assist you in registering you with IRD. But
Excellent.
before going, best to have your numbers clear and numbers understood.
Right. Hevapati, is that clear to you? You can unmute and speak. Hevapati Prasad Madhur. This is your question. I think very important question.
Sir,
right.
thank you, sir. I got that, and thank you for the answer.
Excellent.
Hevapati, please, if you want, you can reach out to me and just let me know where you stand, and I should be able to just have a look and see where you should in terms of IRD, because going to IRD a little late. They will ask few questions, but you're not that late.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Excellent. All right, then that's all that we can see on the chat in terms of questions. All right. So thank you, Praveen, for your very useful, effective presentation. I think people got enlightened about how to make business, right? So it's not just the tech thing, but you need to work with the ROC, Inland Revenue Department, Labor Department, and according to the law of the land. So this is extremely important to make sure that you are not running into troubles. All right. So thank you very much for that, Praveen. Now let me introduce our next speaker of the day. Our next speaker of the day is Mr. Ranjan Seniviratna. Thank you, Ranjan, for joining in this evening. Ranjan is going to talk about the company law. Extremely important for you to know, as I mentioned upfront. Without knowing, you cannot do proper business in Sri Lanka, in any other country, right? So Ranjan earned LLB and LLM qualifications from the University of Colombo, and he's an attorney at law of the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. He's also a solicitor in England and Wales. He has been practicing law for over 20 years. And Ranjan has specialized in corporate and commercial law, intellectual property law, and finance and investment. And he's a professional. He has professional experiences in UK and Singapore. So he's bringing to this audience very deep experience in law, particularly the law applicable to the businesses. So without further ado, I'll call upon Mr. Ranjan to deliver his speech. Ranjan, over to you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much for the introduction. I think all can hear me and also see me properly.
Yeah, we do.
Right. What I will do is I'll start sharing my screen. So can everyone see my screen, the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So I think before I start the presentation, I just want to share my experience, because last few months I was also involved in a project where we have been talking to small and medium scale entrepreneurs island-wide. So the idea is, I think we were talking about how to create an entrepreneurial state, or we call Vyavasayakatva Rajya in Sri Lanka. Because the problem, one of the problems we have is, if you take the school leavers or college leavers, as a percentage, only about 1% become entrepreneurs. Most of the others, they want to do a joint government or private sector and do a job. But if you compare this with a country like USA, you will see, I mean, about 20% of the school leavers, college leavers, they become entrepreneurs. So we were actually promoting entrepreneurship, and we were talking to small and medium scale businesses. One thing we realized, I mean, there are a lot of people who have started at rural level various businesses, and actually they are doing really well. But I think the biggest problem is they don't have the knowledge how to register their business, how to organize their business. That's one thing. And the other thing is how to create a brand. I think we are not going to talk about brands, but I think that's also one of the most important aspects. I think you would have seen, I think, or heard about how Microsoft or how Apple, how they started their business from a garage. And the two things that they were focusing, I think they have structured their business properly so that they could get investment into it. And the other one is they have developed their brands and they have protected their brands. So today we are not going to talk about brands, so we are going to talk about how to register a business. So most common, the way that we have seen is, especially at small scale level, people register their business as a sole proprietorship or partnership with the local, the divisional secretariat, or we call Pradeshya Lekha. So that process is very simple. You can get an application and you can select a business name, and then you can register it as a sole proprietorship or partnership. But if you register as a sole proprietorship, you can open a bank account under that business name, but it doesn't become a separate entity. And you can't have shareholders. Of course, in a partnership, you can have partners, but we don't call them shareholders. So today we are going to talk about, mainly focus about not about how to register a sole proprietorship, but how to incorporate a company as a separate legal entity under the Companies Act of Sri Lanka. So the very simple definition we have given here, a company means a company incorporated under this act or an existing company. You know that this current Companies Act was introduced in 2007. Before that, we had a different act. So the companies incorporated under that, the previous laws, are also accepted as companies under the company law. I don't need to talk about, I think, all these other things. So there are various other laws and regulations which are applicable to various sectors and especially listed companies. So I don't think it's relevant for today's discussion. So let's start how we start the registration process of a company. So the first thing is you have to select a name. You have to come up with a name for your company. And then that company, with your name, company, depending on the nature of the company, it will be a limited company, it will be a private limited company, or it can be a PLC, or it can be a guarantee limited company. But when you are selecting a name, there are certain restrictions as well. First thing is you can't use an existing name. But we were talking about registering a business as a sole proprietorship or partnership. That you can do because they never check whether there are other businesses which are under the same name, and they don't have a mechanism for that. But when you are registering a company, the registrar of companies, you have to make sure that the name is available. For that, you have to do a name search. So if there is another similar name, then your name approval application will be rejected. So once you have found a name, or you have got the name approval, then you can start the registration process. And also, I just want to mention in addition to that, there are certain restrictions of using certain names. For example, you can't use the word like president or municipal, cooperative, national, state, Sri Lanka like that in a company name. For example, you can't incorporate a company called with the word Sri Lanka. You may have seen, for example, Ceylon Tobacco Company. That Ceylon word is allowed, but you can't say Sri Lanka Petroleum Limited like that. You can't use the word Sri Lanka or state or national. So those restrictions are there, but subject to that, you can use any other name. So there are different types of companies. The most important thing is the companies' liabilities are limited, and these companies will have shareholders. So the main different types of companies are public companies. We call them PLCs, and then the most common the type of companies used by startups and small or medium scale businesses are private companies. So in a private company, you can have up to 50 shareholders. And then there are different types of companies called offshore companies, and also unlimited companies, but these are not very common, unlimited companies. And there is this other type of company called company limited by guarantee. So the difference is in a company limited by guarantee that you don't issue shares. So the liabilities of the shareholders will be limited by a certain amount mentioned in the approval. But the important thing is you will not come across these type of the companies in businesses. This company limited by guarantee is very commonly used for charitable institutes, non-profit making organizations. So mostly our discussion we will focus on companies with limitability, because they are the types of companies that are used by the businesses to organize their business. So when you have, as we said, so once you have decided on the name and then you have got the name approval, then the next step will be, you will have to, now everything is done online. So we call it EROC. So on that platform, I think what you can do is you can go to the website and you have to apply for the name approval. So once you have got the approval, it will direct you how to create the necessary forms to submit your articles of association, and also relevant forms to appoint directors and issue shares. So one important thing is there is a requirement that you have to submit the document called articles of association. We call it the constitution of the company. Before the current act was introduced in 2007, it was mandatory when you are incorporating a company, you have to mention the objectives, business objectives for which you are incorporating the company. But that requirement is no longer there, except when there are foreign shareholders. So the reason is you have to mention the nature of your business if you have foreign shareholders, because under a different law, exchange control law, there are certain restrictions on foreigners doing certain type of businesses. For example, a foreigner can't do retail business in Sri Lanka, foreign company, or coastal fishing, or primary processing of agriculture, things like that. If it's a foreign company, a foreigner can hold up to less than 50%, or in some cases 40% shares. So because of that, if you are going to start a business with a foreign shareholder, then you have to make sure that your articles state the nature or type of the business that you are going to do. Otherwise, it won't get approved. So once your articles, the constitutional document is approved, then you have to submit what we call Form 1. Form 1 is the initial document which contains the initial shareholders, the details of the directors and the company secretary. And with that, you have to file another form called Form 18, which is the consent of the directors. This should be signed by each director consenting that they are stating that they are consenting to act as a director of the company. And then the Form 19, that's a consent form from the company secretary. This process is very simple. I mean, you don't have to be a lawyer or a professional to do, incorporate a company. But it's always, sometimes it's advisable, I mean, if to get some sort of the advice from a professional if you have any doubts. And yes, the articles of association of the company should be signed by each initial shareholders. So the only thing is the whole process will, for a private limited company, will take, I mean, sometimes less than a week. But the problem is most of the times if there are mistakes that you have made, or if signature is missing, or then they will return it and then you will have to resubmit the same document. So this is, I mean, very briefly, I explained to you how to register a company, limited liability company. So after you have submitted all the documents, then the company registrar will assign a number. We call it the company registration number, and issue a certificate of incorporation. So this certificate of incorporation is it's like the birth certificate of a natural person. So that's the document that you have to, whenever you want to open a bank account, bank will ask for it. So that is the evidence which confirms that a separate legal person has been created by the law. So certificate of incorporation, you would have, I think most of you would have seen it. It has the basic details about the company's name and the registration number and the date of incorporation, and also the type of the company. So I think I just covered the technical aspect of how to register a company. This process is not very complicated. It's a simple process. So let's go into, I think, a bit more academic aspects of, I mean, the consequences of registration, etc. So the whole purpose of incorporation of a company, as opposed to registering a business or business name or partnership, is creating a body corporate or separate legal personality. So this, in the eyes of the law, the company is a distinct, different, and separate legal entity from its shareholders. So the most important thing is all the shareholders that their liabilities will be limited by the number of shares that for which they have contributed. So these are the basically consequences of incorporation: separate legal personality, perpetual succession. So this perpetual succession is also very important, because I was discussing with what are the advantages of incorporating a limited liability company to do your business. I mean, there are a lot of advantages. For example, if you are just carrying on a business, let's say that Hidden stores or Gunapala tire works, like that, with a name, but it's under your individual capacity. One problem is you can't, let's say that you want to expand your business and you want to raise capital. Then, of course, individually you can borrow from your friends, family, or even from a bank. But if it's a company, separate corporate entity, then you can issue shares and you can get more people to invest in the company in equity as shareholders. So that's one of the biggest advantages of incorporation of a company. So when we are talking to most of the small scale and medium scale businesses, we always advise them, even it's a family business, and even if they have only one shareholder or a couple of family members, incorporate a limited liability company and make sure that, I mean, you will get see a lot of business opportunities. You never know. So whenever you get more business opportunities, you will need more capital, and then you don't need to worry. You can issue shares and you can expand your business. And another advantage of this perpetual succession is how to the other one is, for example, let's say that you want to sell your business. So you want to get out of the business, and rather than selling a individual business, it's very easy. If it's a company, limited liability company, you can sell the shares. And also there'll be an advantage of inheritance. In terms of inheritance, I know that in Sri Lanka, still we don't have inheritance tax, but I heard that the government announced that government is contemplating of introducing an inheritance tax at the 2024-2025. So one of the advantages is if you have your children and you can make them shareholders of the company, and after your death, or you don't need to you don't have to follow the inheritance process to give it to them because they are already shareholders. One thing is avoiding the additional tax liability, but in addition to that, the process will be very easy. So you would have seen in most of the even the big companies, like if you look at most of the big businesses, I don't know to name, but you can see that most of the founders, how they have slowly they have introduced their children into business. They slowly appoint one of the children into the, let's say, tourism sector, another one into the consumer sector of their groups, and then they'll issue shares to them. So the succession or that inheritance process will be less complicated. And another advantage is, I think most of you are maybe startups or doing already started and the developing your businesses. The advantage is when it comes to employment. So most of the people, I mean, even the young people, I think they would like to say that they don't want to say that I work for an individual. Rather, they want to say that I work for a company. It's easy. And also it's also easy to manage employees because you don't have a direct responsibility. They are employees of a legal entity. So those are the main advantages of incorporating companies. So that's why when we are talking to startups and small and medium scale businesses, we always advise them to convert, if it's a sole proprietorship or partnership, convert it into a limited liability company. Yeah, and this is, I think, a bit more academic. My junior prepared these slides thinking that I'm actually trying to teach law to some law students. But anyway, since they are, like explained to you, we were talking about it. I think once you have incorporated a company, we call it it has a veil of incorporation. So this is the veil of incorporation is the veil that separates shareholders and the company. But there are instances when even certain situations, although all the liabilities of the shareholders are limited, that the law will, yeah, the law. I'll jump into the last slide. So law will look beyond that incorporation and pass the liability to the directors of the company. For example, if the company has defaulted payment of statutory dues to employees like gratuity, salaries, or EPF, ETF, then the law will not say that the liability of the directors is limited. So they'll look beyond them. They go after them. Also, someone has used the company to commit a fraud or illegal activity, then you can't limit the liability. And also there are some specific clause which says that especially when there are criminal liabilities, some industries are highly regulated industries. For example, let's say I'm familiar with the tobacco industry. For example, under the tobacco industry, if you do certain things, like if you advertise a tobacco product, you become the company, it's an offense, criminal offense. So you can't punish a company. So the law very clearly says that will be personal level. So those are exceptions. But other than that, the company have a separate legal personality. And also cover as well that because as we said, a company has a separate legal personality. Because of that, company can enter a company's name. So, but only thing is, it's an artificial person, so company can't act on its own. So company will have to have a human agent. So those human agents are the directors and the managers of the company. So when a company enters into a contract, you have to in the contract, you have to specifically mention the name of the company, the private limited or limited company full name, and then usually we give the registration number. This is very similar because if an individual is signing contract, you put the NIC number. But if it's a company, incorporated company, we insert the registration number, and then the company's registered office. So I forgot to mention about it. When you are incorporating company, you must have a registered address for the company. So that registered address should be mentioned when you are entering into a contract. But in cases, people have different. They have a registered office and they have a principal place of business. So you can mention both if you want. If for correspondence purposes, if you want to get everything to your principal place of business, or when you are entering into a contract, in the contract you can mention the name of the registered office address, and in the contract you can have a separate clause where you say that for the purpose of this contract, all communication should be addressed to this person at this address. And usually, since these days also are happening in email, you can give the official email address. So then, yes, when a company, how can you sign a contract valid? How can you sign a contract validly on behalf of a company? So earlier, before 2007 Act, there was a requirement for the mandatory requirement for the company to maintain a common seal. We used to call it embossed seal. So whenever a company signs anything, you have to put that embossed seal, and then the two directors or one director and the company secretary must sign. So it was mandatory, but the current Companies Act, which was introduced in 2007, has done away with that mandatory requirement. So now contract can be entered into, the law is a bit vague, or flexible. Generally, most of the commercial contracts are signed by, the CEO can sign, or two directors can sign, or director and company secretary can sign. There is no mandatory requirement to put the embossed seal. Or alternatively, company can give a power of attorney to an individual. It should be a registered power of attorney. That person can sign all the contracts on behalf of the company. Only difference is that there are certain requirements when you want to enter into a contract or in relation to an immovable property, house or a land or building. In that case, there is a mandatory requirement now that the lease agreement or the sale of the transfer deed must be registered with the local land registry. So there is a requirement that company should place the seal, and two directors or the company secretary, the director and company secretary must sign. Or alternatively, you can give power of attorney to an individual director and say that this person has been properly authorized by the company to enter into a contract on behalf of the company. But in that case, the power of attorney should be registered. Yes, and then in the other requirement is, if in certain cases, yes, you can enter into, oral contracts are valid, non-written contracts. So it's difficult, but you can enter into a verbal contract also. But for example, if you are doing a business and if you want to enter into a contract with another corporate entity, my advice is make sure, although it's not mandatory, make sure that the company gives you a resolution authorizing the directors to enter into that contract, especially if it's the big contract, valuable contract. But if it's a lease of a property or transfer deed, there is a mandatory requirement that the company, both selling company and buying company, or lessee, both companies should pass resolution. So there is this mandatory obligation on notaries to get a resolution from the company, but director's resolution authorizing the company to enter into that contract. So whenever my advice is, I mean, if you want to get buy something from a company, or even if you want to enter into any commercial agreement, make sure that the person that you are talking to in the company, he has been properly authorized. Although the law says that that authority given to the person can be implied or expressed, that because if there is a dispute and in chat, the proving that implied authority is not very easy. So make sure that, for example, you may be dealing with the general manager of the company, CEO, or even a supply chain manager, someone like that. That's perfectly okay. For example, when you are doing a business with a company, that companies, someone can sign, manager can sign on behalf of the company. But when a manager signs a commercial contract, make sure that that manager has been authorized by the company. I think we covered basically most of the, yeah, and the other one is, I think, change of name. Sometimes if you want to change the name, yes, there is another process. Sometimes you may, for example, you want to go international and you want to change your name for more sophisticated name, and which is okay. I mean, you can completely change the name, but by changing the name, the ROC will issue a new certificate of incorporation, but the starting point of the legal entity will be the original position. So because you have changed the name, it doesn't mean that any contracts entered into under the previous name will become invalid, and you don't need to do anything about it because that continuity will be there. Yeah, and the other one is, I think, use of the company name and the number. I think we were discussing about it. So under this section, it's mandatory that whenever you are doing certain things or issuing documents, you have to mention the company's details. For example, company registration number and company name. For example, you are using letterheads for your businesses. You have to ensure that the company's full name is there, and also the company's registration number. Of course, you don't need to use the registered office address. If you have a different address, business address, you can use it. And the official notices and official publications of the company, and all your bills, for promissory notes, endorsement, checkbooks, and everything, you have to mention company name and the number. And yes, I mean, these are mandatory things, but it's always advisable for all the formal documentation, you will use the company's name and the registered company registration number. And there is also this requirement whenever you have a registered the company, you have to, at your registered office, you have to mention the company name and the company registration number. You can put it in a display board, but I have seen some people, what they do is they laminate the certificate of incorporation, they display it at the reception or somewhere close by. So just to comply with this requirement. And yeah, that's it about, I think, incorporation of companies. I don't know whether we are going to discuss or whether we have time to discuss about winding up of a company and whether it's really relevant for you at this stage. But I also have only this slide on winding up. I mean, just like like incorporation, you can, if you want to, let's say you want to close down your business, if it's a limited liability company, then there is a process. I mean, there are 3 processes. I mean, if all the shareholders agree, you can do it voluntarily. And then another process, you can by court, if there's a disagreement, if someone wants to wind up the company, then there is a process to make an application to court. And also there is another process called subject to supervision of the court. But this is a very complicated and area. I think I did not plan to discuss the whole process in details. So if you have any questions, I think I can answer.
Yeah, Ranjan, there are few questions. There's one question from Rushdie. The question is, what is your advice for registered companies being idle or not functioning for a long time?
Yeah. What is your advice?
Advice, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if this is a very common problem, people just incorporate companies and they don't start the business, or they start the business and then they just don't, or rather they stop it halfway. So the best advice is not to keep it, I mean, the registration alive if you don't have any plan to start your business. And if it's just a company you have incorporated and you have not carried out any business, I think there is another process where you can apply your name to be struck out. But yes, I mean, if you have incorporated a company and if you don't want to do any business, it's always advisable to properly close it down, because otherwise there can be other liabilities as well. You will get notices from the ROC asking why are you not filing your annual returns, etc.
Yeah. There's another one from Raja. If you register an organization as a limited liability company, I think that's what he's referring to. Is it possible to do several businesses under the same name or same company?
You can, because now there are no restrictions that the company is not required to mention your business objectives in the articles of association. This requirement was there previously. So now when you're incorporating a company, you can, it's like a natural person, you can do any, I mean, several businesses. Of course, as I said earlier, if there are foreign shareholders, there can be restrictions. But as an advice, I can tell you, I mean, if you are going to do completely different types of businesses, for example, if you want to do some agriculture business and at the same time some sort of fishery or related thing, it's always advisable to have two different entities for the purpose of management. It will be easy, especially when you are going to banks to borrow, when you want to raise additional capital, it will be easy.
All right. There's another one, 51% shareholder. So, okay, the other way around. Can a 51% shareholder wind up the company without other shareholders' permission?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned, that there are various, mainly three, the different ways of winding up a company. So you can't go for a voluntary winding up if some shareholders disagree, but then that 51% shareholder will have to can make an application to courts under certain circumstances. And also there are options where other shareholders can buy him out and let him go like that. But you can't do it voluntarily on your own. You have to go to courts and you have to go through the procedure and get the approval of the court.
Okay, there's another one. If you need to start an NGO, what is the suitable way for it?
Yeah, NGO, there are, I mean, if most of the people for this non-charitable work, they use this mechanism called incorporating a guarantee limited company, because that guarantee limited company is the model that has been that is there for non-profit making organizations. I have seen most of the people using it, but in addition to that, for NGOs, I think there is another place called NGO Secretariat, and you have to get a special approval from them as well. There are various ways. Some people, without incorporating an entity, they register, I think, a name, and then they go through that procedure and get the approval also. But there is a special approval for NGOs now.
All right. The other question is, how long does it take to register a company after handing over required documents?
If you submit all the documents in order, if your documents are in order, I think within 3-4 working days, you will get the certificate of incorporation.
Right. I think this is the last question, Rajan. What is the procedure for a government officer to register a company?
Government officer to register, there is no special procedure because I mean, they never ask whether you are a government officer or not.
Yeah.
But only thing is you have to check whether you can, if you are a government officer, public official, whether from where you are working, the office you are holding, whether there are restrictions of you engaging in certain types of businesses. But otherwise, I mean, there is no restriction. You can incorporate a company. Although when you incorporate a company, they ask, I think, your profession. That doesn't mean that there are restrictions on any professionals to, doing any business or incorporating a company.
All right. I think that's about it, Ranjan. I think it was a very useful information, a lot of information for all of our participants. And I would remind you that these areas are actually very broad. It's not like one size fits all, right? So when
Yeah.
you proceed with your company startups, incorporation, and bringing in your investors, scaling up your company, you have to follow these steps. So please use these uh, lecture materials, and also the video will be available on the playlist. Please review the video and also refer the documents, and make sure you do it in the right way. So one of the first few things you need to remember is that you can initially work on proprietary yourself, your money, your friends' money, partnerships, that's all right. But if you really want to expand your business, bring in investors and employ workers, right? Then you need to register and give it a legal presence, like another person, not you or your friend. So then you can invite shareholders, investors, and other people working in your company. You can scale it up. And when you do that, you have to follow this, uh, do everything according to the law of the land. So I think this was really entertaining and enlightening for all of us. I'm sure, Ranjan, some of our participants today, they have already started up their own businesses and they are doing it their own way, probably without knowing much about what is staying around them, the law and all that. So if they continue down that path, they might run into problems. So this is the right time that we caution them. Okay, when you scale up, when you go into many, many years developing your business, right, you will be more and more liable, right, if you are not following the proper process. So,
Professor, just a suggestion. I mean,
yep.
this is something at the beginning I told. I mean, one of the observations I have made about Sri Lankan startup is I think they don't do anything about their brands, and especially when you are starting a business, your brand is very important. You have to decide on a brand, logo, colors.
Yep.
And also that, I mean, if it's a very new innovation, I think you have to register. You can get a patent. And I think that brand protection, registration of brands is an area I think most of my experience is most of our small scale, I think, especially small and medium scale businesses are not aware. Maybe you can consider, I think, in future doing a different session, separate session.
Yeah, there's a session coming on branding. Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Ranjan, for sharing your time. I know you're a very busy person, and
Thank you very
but
much.
yet wanted to join this very important course and actually educating our young entrepreneurs so that they would become successful businessmen in the future.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity, I mean, to address the...
All right. So we are out of time for the day, and this is the two-third part of the program. We have only 4 units to go. So I think you will be engaged properly as you have been so far in the program. All right. So tomorrow we have John Fraser and two other experts talking to you and about sharing their own experience on raising capital, how to raise capital to scale up your businesses. So with that, I want to conclude today's session. Thank you very much for joining in. Have a good night. And I'll see you tomorrow.